This is the TSA pre-check line. We've dealt with this before. This line stretches all the way down here, but here's the new wrinkle. Step outside with me real quick. You kind of have to see this one to believe it. This is actually still the TSA pre-check line. This line now wraps outside. So if you think about it, it wraps around the inside 4 different times, then comes outside and wraps around 2 other times to get all these passengers through.
That is Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. And those people standing outside in the cold are trying to catch a flight. This is America right now, this week, today.
New government, new priorities. And somehow the people that are keeping your family safe at the gates haven't even gotten a paycheck in like 6 weeks.
I'm Dr. Ida Brown.
And I'm Dr. Sonia Sloan.
And we are AYA,
Black and Brown Women Disruptors in Healthcare and Beyond. So let me set the scene for you because I have been in this. Like, I've been one of the passengers this week on that side, both international and here in America. So I live in Houston, and Bush Intercontinental was a hot mess. Yesterday, I got to the airport around 4 a.m. to get in line by 5:45, start moving, only to wait 2 hours inside. At least I was inside underground, but it was hot and it was bad. And these are people that are still trying to go on spring breaks, families trying to get to the beach just to have life. But you had a lot of business people. Commerce was stopping because we didn't have time to buy or shop anything once we were in the airport. And so right now, today, Americans are standing in security lines all across America at airports, stretching out the door, wrapping around like in the parking lot, not at the terminal, outside. Out the door, even at JFK, up to 4-hour wait. Somebody said this morning, 7 a.m. flight, they barely made it just trying to get through security, didn't even check a bag. So if you fly all the time like I do, and even Dr. Brown flies a lot, some place like Houston, my airport, 40% of those that George Bush Intercontinental TSA officers called out for work, they're not coming because they're not getting paid. Do you blame them? I don't blame them. So the airport had to redirect employees from finance, IT, maintenance, and just to manage the crowds. And I'll tell you personally, they were just pushing us through like herding cattle. So now why? Why is this happening now?
Because roughly 61,000 TSA employees have been working without pay since mid-February. They missed their first full paycheck. They're missing their second paycheck. These TSA workers, some of them are even going to the blood bank and donating plasma to pay their rent. They're facing eviction notices. More than 450 have already quit. And the government's response? Send ICE agents to hand out water bottles and play with their phones in the TSA line. I need you to sit with that for a moment. ICE agents getting paid to hand out water bottles and play on their phones. And they lack the skill set to even be TSA screeners, right? So there's a line that only exists because the workers who were supposed to be there weren't paid. And ICE is standing there. So as one union leader put it, that's like giving a person dying of pneumonia a teaspoon of cough syrup.
And as your president put it this week in a Truth Social, out of nowhere, now all of a sudden it's become an emergency. I am now using my authorities under the law to protect our great country, as I always do. Therefore, I am going to sign an order instructing the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Wayne Mullen, to immediately pay our TSA agents in order to address this emergency situation and to quickly stop the Democrat chaos at the airports. It is not an easy thing to do, but I am going to do it. So now, 41 days, after 41 days, your President Trump announced that he's going to sign an executive order to immediately pay TSA agents, calling it a national emergency. National emergency. Now, as physicians, Dr. Brown and I, we're trained to recognize a crisis before it becomes catastrophic. That's the whole point of prevention, right? So I'm asking as a doctor, not as a pundit, when does something become an emergency? Dr. Brown, here's the question that we should be asking out loud. If it's a national emergency today, what was it 6 weeks ago? And what was it when those workers missed their first paycheck, their second paycheck, third paycheck? When they started calling out that they couldn't come into work, when the lines started forming and growing, people start missing flights, that's when it became an emergency? Or is it emergency because it's inconvenient enough when people who look like the people that are making decisions, because even Delta wouldn't allow some of the Congress people to get their perks to get in line earlier or first. They had to get in line like the rest of Americans. So that's not here as a value issue, or it is a value issue, but it's definitely not a budget problem, Dr. Brown.
No, and here's the thing that was never declared an emergency. They called it Operation Epic Fury, right? February 28th, no congressional vote, no debate, no emergency declaration, just orders. The pre-strike buildup alone, $630 million before a single bomb dropped. 2 carrier strike groups, $6.5 million a day each.
Mm-hmm.
Each. So that's already $11.3 billion. The Pentagon is already demanding $200 billion more. So they move that money very fast. You've got at least 13 U.S. soldiers that are dead, 3,100 people killed in Iran, mostly some children, 210 medical centers, schools. Gas is expensive, right? $3.63 a gallon. Your tank knows the problem here. Your paycheck knows there's a problem. Yet $75 billion for ICE, they were fully funded. While the rest of Homeland Security, the people keeping us safe, went dark. But they found money for ICE.
But paying the people that are keeping your family safe at the airport, that took 41 days. A national emergency declaration, an executive order of questionable legal authority, of course, again, that it's not a budget problem. Again, this goes back to values and what's really going on, Dr. Brown.
And this whole thing, it's not improvised. I know we almost sound like a recording, right? ICE in the airports, it was never part of a backup plan. It was the plan. It's in Project 2025.
Page 169.
Right? Starve the government workforce, create the chaos, let the public scream, then hand the contract to a private security company that answers to no union, has no oversight, and no one that you voted for. The TSA gets hollowed out, private contractors move in, and ICE, already there, already in uniform, already asking for your papers, they stay. Let's roll the next clip.
We can use what's happening with these ICE helping out at the airports. We can use this as a test run, as a test case to really perfect ICE's involvement in the 2026 midterm elections.
That's some bull. I'm sorry. Because Steve Bannon will say the quiet part out loud that we all are thinking, right? This is a test run. Did y'all hear him? He said it. ICE in the airports in March, so they know exactly what it's going to look like when it rolls out, having ICE at the polls in November.
So, get Americans used to showing their papers to a federal agent just to get where they're going, right? Normalize the checkpoint, normalize the demand, normalize the fear. And when November comes, it won't feel new. It's just going to be Tuesday. That is not a budget problem. That is not even a security problem. That is a democracy problem. Dr. Sloan.
And it is exactly why what I'm about to talk about next should terrify every single one of us, right? Because while America was distracted at the airport chaos, because I was, while we were being, arguing about TSA and these ICE, lines handing out bottles of water, and it's on every news station, a bill has been moving through Congress that could fundamentally alter who gets to participate in the American democracy. Not just a little bit, but forever. It's called the SAVED Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And the name sounds perfectly reasonable, harmless, right? And that's by design.
So here's what it actually does, Dr. Sloan. It requires documentary proof of citizenship, a passport, which only about half of Americans even have a passport, or certified birth certificate just to register to vote. Not to become a citizen, not to get security clearance, to register to vote. So the SAVE Act requires a stricter photo ID to cast the ballot, and it limits online, mail, and third-party voter registration, and it could require in-person verification just to update your registration when you move. That's not a small policy adjustment. That's structural dismantling of voting access, and it could be the end of American democracy as we know it. And so let me tell you who gets hurt. And it's going to actually be us women, right? Because this part of the conversation doesn't get the airtime that it needs. Millions of American women changed their last name when they got married. Your birth certificate has your maiden name. Your driver's license has your married name. So under this SAVE bill, that mismatch, which is completely legal, completely normal, and a very, very common life event, becomes a bureaucratic wall between you and your ballot. Tens of millions of women, fully eligible, fully American, locked out, cannot vote because of that mismatch. Dr. Sloan?
And getting those updates, to those documents, it's not free. Like, passports cost a lot of money. Birth certificate changes it's a headache, right? Costs money, takes time, a lot of which most people don't have. And it means navigating a government system, once again, that are not built to be easy in the first place or fast. You know that. The burden is going to land heaviest on low income women. So single moms, women who are already running on empty. And for those our trans sisters, if your ID aligns with your name or your gender markers, voting becomes not just difficult, but potentially confrontational every single time. So because the data is the data, right? Approximately 21 million eligible American voters do not have access to easy voting or easy access to their passports so they can vote. And definitely 21 million, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of votes. And those voters are disproportionately who? Black, Latino, younger, and lower income. So there are not people trying to cheat the systems, you guys. These people are just trying to get out and vote and do their part as Americans. Non-citizen voting is already illegal. We already know that. It's already extremely rare. And these are eligible American citizens who would be now locked out because they don't have the right paperwork on hand.
And this bill, it really pushes states to verify voters, but using federal databases, systems that are not perfect, that flag eligible voters incorrectly. And that places the highest burden on naturalized citizens, people with name variations, and communities already fighting bureaucratic barriers every single day. And I want to be fair. Right? Supporters of this bill say it's about election integrity, about building trust. And yes, trust matters. I believe that. But you cannot build trust by destroying access. You cannot claim to love democracy while making it harder for your fellow citizens to participate in it.
We can't talk about trust with this current political climate, right? So here's the truth about the bill, though. It's not really mentioning race. It does not mention gender, but structurally and mechanically, it shifts the burden of proof onto the voter. And it hits hardest exactly where documentation gaps exist. And where are those gaps? They are not eventually distributed across America, but they never have been distributed, right? So now you think about what we just watched happen to TSA. Think about how the systems have claimed it didn't have the money to suddenly fund, or they found the money now. When the crisis becomes impossible to ignore, when the affected are the people that it now bothers because they don't want to stand in line, then they can find the money, right? When the political cost of an inaction becomes too high, that's when these systems work. They work fine until they don't, right? And when they break, they don't just break evenly, Dr. Brown.
The SAVE Act is the same playbook, right? It's applied to the ballot box. It won't make headlines the way a 2-hour airport line does. There's no footage of people frustrated, exhausted, missing their flights. It's going to happen quietly. One registration form at a time, one documentation gap at a time, one name mismatch at a time. But the result? Identical. Some Americans vote, no problem. And others, disproportionately women, Black, Latino, poor, find a door that used to be open is closed. So even Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, stood up and said it plainly. In Alaska, producing the documentation this bill requires isn't just inconvenient. For many of her constituents, it is financially impossible. It is logistically impossible. And the time it takes, time that working people, single mothers, rural communities, they simply can't afford to lose.
And I need to be very clear about something here, Dr. Brown, that this bill isn't really solving a real problem, right? Non-citizen voting, we talked about, it's not illegal. That's already illegal. So, and it's very, very minor. That's very, very rare. So what are we doing here? It's already been prosecuted if you're trying to vote illegally. The crisis that they are describing doesn't exist.
You know what does exist? What's real, right? Your 21 million eligible American citizens who could be locked out of the ballot box because of a documentation gap this government created and has never bothered to fix. It's not election integrity. This is engineered exclusion.
So what is exactly a crisis, and what should a crisis, or is a bill that could strip millions of eligible Americans of their vote in one system that is supposed to belong to all of us equally? If you found your money in bombs, you can find a way to make voting accessible. If it was an emergency when the airports got inconvenient, then at that emergency, now democracy gets restricted. And if we learned anything in the last 6 weeks of the airport lines, it's that when the government wants something to work, they find a way. And when it doesn't, it lets people suffer. So don't let them make your vote the thing they wait to protect.
Stay empowered, stay disruptive, and remember your voice, your vote, they're coming for both. We are AYA, contributors to the MeidasTouch Network and proud members of the Meidas Mighty. Please subscribe, like, share, and follow for more updates. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great week.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.